Hello, welcome to the Marketing Guys for Small Business podcast. I'm Paul Barthel. I'll be the host today, and I'm joined by Jen, Ian, and Ken. And today we're going to talk about website maintenance, why it's important, what's involved, why you should do it, and why you might want to outsource it. So, I'm sure everyone in this panel is run into this because we hear it all the time. And it's like, why do I have to pay for this? I have a new website. Isn't it secure? And I've never had to have website maintenance before. So, Ken, I'm going to start with you. Start at the beginning with some of these things. What is it? Why is it important? And why does it even a new website need maintenance?
Yeah, well, hopefully my screen didn't freeze up there. Maybe it did.
No.
Um, yeah, so basically, let's start with the concept of the web. They call it a web for a reason, right? I mean, you've got all of these interconnected things. So just because you build a website, if you're thinking about it as a static commodity, that's the wrong way to look at it. Things are always changing on the web, always. Um, and so you might be able to control largely what your website does, and it may be a 5 page website, it may be a 250-page website. If it's a 5 page website, obviously there's probably a little less rigor required in terms of maintenance. But the reason you need to maintain your website is because of hackers and security related issues. Number one, the fastest way to get your website hacked is to not maintain it. I mean, there are people who literally go to school and their training is how can they hack websites.
Oh,
And that's all they do all day long. They fill out forms. They try to get people to click on, malicious things. They try to insert malicious code on websites. So you can't just set it and forget it. There are platforms that are out there that make it sound like it's that easy. They take care of that on the back end, and that may be a good solution for for really small business, or if you're not really focused on a search engine optimization type strategy. But really, you just can't set it and forget it. The other thing is, just because somebody built you a brand new website, you still need to review it and periodically look at it and make sure everything looks good and normal. A really common mistake that we see is when people build a new website, they get lazy. If you had an old website and they're grabbing content from your old website, they may literally, while it's in a development environment, it may look fine. They may grab an old picture from your website. First of all, you may not have the approval to use that licensing of that picture because the previous website provider may own that licensing. So, but as soon as the old website is taken down, your picture is a broken link because actually your picture was never uploaded to your website directly. It was pointed to your old website. So you think about it. When you're driving down the highway and you see a billboard that looks like crap, or when you're driving past a business, and you look at the front of their business and it doesn't look very appealing or inviting, well, people are thinking that same thing about your website. So if you have broken pictures, or things like that, your formatting gets all jacked up because the platform that you use made an update. Look, you can only monitor artificially these things, or automatically, I should say, so much. I mean, at a certain point in time, it just takes somebody to go take a look at it and make sure everything still looks right, because formatting could be jacked up, but your system may not tell you that formatting got messed up. So it's really important, and it ultimately comes down to the credibility of your business. Why give people any reason to not trust your business or think that your business isn't actively in business? I mean, an old, outdated website says a lot of signals that maybe your website's not in business. And we live in an economy, we have for the last couple of years, and it looks like we're going to see this for a continuing period where there's massive change in businesses. Some businesses are opening, some businesses are closing. It happens all the time. Sometimes another thing, and this is more content related as opposed to the care and feeding of, the system that runs your website. But, if a lot of businesses are changing their business hours because they can't hire staff, or a whole variety of reasons. If you have that incorrect information on your website, somebody looks you up online and they decide to drive, 10, 15 miles to your business and you're not open, that's not good either. They may never come back. I can speak from experience. I have never gone back to a business because they didn't give me the proper information from their website. So you can't just set it and forget it. And it really, look, if you're doing your business right, you shouldn't have time to maintain your website. So you should consider outsourcing it to somebody that has that expertise and the tool set to make that easy, and a rigorous process in place so that you don't have to interrupt your other busy schedule of activities that you should be focused on running your day-to-day operations of your business.
So, Jen, I read a while back that something like 88% of people probably won't return to a website if they had a bad experience. So what would a bad experience on a website be? What would that look like?
I know it sounds so loaded, right? Bad experience. Well, it can be this. I mean, people come to your website to find out information, right? Whether it is directions, start times, opening hours, information about your product or service, information if they're about to buy a product or service that they have very little experience with, maybe as validation too, word of mouth, got your business in there, you were recommended to go or to participate or to buy from this business. You heard great things about it. Now you're checking it out online for your own education. So a bad experience would be, it would be a more frustrating experience. Bad, like I said, it sounds so terrible. So something like the website doesn't load very quickly, or you go to look it up on your mobile phone and it's not mobile friendly, or you click through to a link to learn more or to download that ebook or to download that checklist and you get caught in a 404 page, or you get caught in a website that's just spinning and nothing loads for you. Other bad experiences could be content that hasn't been updated in years, and you would know this because there's dates from 2017 on there. So it's the kind of thing that you would come to a website and you wouldn't be totally sure about the ability for this company to fulfill your order or fulfill your service that you were after them to provide for you, or to even have any trustworthiness about it. So a bad experience would mean that links are broken, sign-up forms don't work, they can't get the information that they want to get from you. They're being delayed either by technology on your side or by simply the information not being there. And the kind of impression that leaves for them is, if you can't have your website working properly, how are you going to, how can I trust that you're going to repair my roof properly or cut my hair right or, deliver my pizza on time or something, a lot larger or a lot more serious with a financial consideration to your business. So those are the kinds of bad experiences that we mean. And these are completely within your control. These have nothing to do with your internet service provider going out. These are all standard website maintenance and good practices to have a website up and running. And it's the kind of thing that is, can be taken care of with a little care and some very, very routine maintenance on your website.
And Jen, do you see these two as well? Like the ones I keep coming across are they're not HTTPS, so they don't have SSL secure certificates. So Google actually will tell you, like, this is an insecure site. Your data may be in jeopardy, basically. And then the other one I see a lot of still, which surprises me because I guess I'm in the industry, is non-mobile optimized websites. So, if in some industries, 60 to 70% of all users who come to your website are mobile, right, on their smartphone. If you try to bring it up and you can't read anything because it's mouse type and you have to scroll around, right, to try to even navigate the old site. Do you guys come across that a lot?
Yeah. Those are good points. Those are good points. Especially the non-secure one. It makes you feel like you're going somewhere dangerous when you get that flashed up on the screen, and you're like, oh, I'm just going to look at this information. But as well too, some of the pushback that we have heard about the making sure that does your site work on mobile is like, well, no one's going to buy ABC, whatever we're selling, on their mobile phone. It's much too large of a commitment or too long of a sales cycle. But I think you're missing the point there. People do all kinds of research, all kinds of information gathering on more than their laptops. So
well, and
points.
even if the transaction's not going to happen, and even if users don't really go look at that particular website because of the nature of that business or transaction, Google cares, and it has an impact on your ranking.
That's very fair. Yeah.
So mobile is everything these days.
Yeah.
Whether or
and
not,
in fact, most websites are the algorithm Google uses now, and this has been going on for probably 3 or 4 years, is that they've moved to the mobile first optimization or algorithm, right? So
right.
Yeah. Mobile first indexing.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So Ian, you coined a phrase. Is this your phrase? Mouse typing? Is that what you said?
Mouse type. It's so good too. I'm like,
Mouse
only
type.
a mouse can read it.
No, I don't know. In one of the businesses or corporations I worked in, we used to call like the legalese type at the bottom of things mouse type.
Right.
Oh, all
Because
right.
it was so small. Yeah.
Well, I learned
so
something today, so that's a plus right there.
mouse type. All right, good.
Well, so Ian, you kind of dovetailed into this. So let's talk about security. You talked about SSL. Is that all it is? And something I've heard is I don't actually sell anything on my website. They just fill out a contact form. So why should I be worried about security?
Yeah, I mean, the first answer to that goes back to what we just talked about. If Google cares about security, we should all care about security, because Google is the gateway for most of our websites to get actual people, buyers, to our website. So that's super, super important and shouldn't be overlooked. The other is that, when Jen was talking about that pop-up that happens when you try to go to an unsecure website, that's a horrible experience. And you actually have to jump through hoops to actually, like, it's almost like you're signing a waiver when you do that, because Google's saying, do not go to this website, whatever you do. But if you want to, like, really small, like, click here, advanced settings or whatever, then click here, like, you're taking your life into your own hands, because you're opening yourself up to potential malware, right? That's what Google's saying, is you're putting yourself at risk. In fact, I think that's the words it uses. So that is, that is a horrible experience when you're trying to reduce barriers for people to go through their buyer's journey. How much harder? Like, imagine if you were to want to go to a physical location of a building and they've got police tape across the entrance saying, do not enter this building. But if you want to, you can slide underneath the police tape. Like, it's ridiculous to think that it doesn't impact the person trying to get the information and buy from you. So I think that's really important. The other piece is that SSL is important, but it's part of your overall tech stack. By tech stack, I mean all of the technology you need as a business in order to deliver a website that's, optimized, secure, and hits all of the right buttons for your prospects. So SSL is super important, throat lozenge time, to help keep your website from being hacked, to give a sense of security to visitors, and also to get people there through Google. Your website is hosted on a server through your hosting company. Your server is based on PHP usually. I won't even go into what all that is, but it's a technology platform that hosts your website. And if you're with a reputable host, that will get updated on a regular basis, but they're often several versions behind, so you can force updates, that kind of stuff. Your website is based on a content management system like WordPress or Drupal or Wix or something like that, right? Where it's an actual content management system, and you have to update that. Your website has, if you're on WordPress, it has themes, it has plugins. You have to update all of those things. And all these tech stack elements can become outdated. They need updating. Sometimes they need to even be replaced because sometimes plugins, themes, whatever it is, those companies go under occasionally. So when you actually click on the plugin and go to info, you can actually see when the last time it was updated. So even when you're installing plugins, you should do that, because if it hasn't been updated for 6 months or more, don't use that plugin. That's a bad plugin because they're not keeping it up to date. So any of these things can be a weak link. The good ones are constantly updated, meaning the developer is always aware of any potential hacking weaknesses that might be in their plugin or their theme. WordPress is constantly updating their platform because they're trying to close up these gaps. Of course, they're trying to make it better as well. They're trying to improve the functionality of the themes, the plugins, the platform. So you have to keep them up to date. But if you can't keep these technologies up to date on an ongoing basis, you're basically leaving your barn doors open of your website wide open for hackers to exploit. And they will. And once your website has been hacked, you are forever in the bullseye of hackers. Trust me, we've taken on, we've inherited websites from clients that come to us who have been hacked. And we do malware remediation and scanning and all that kind of stuff. But you have to understand that once your website has been hacked, your URL is on the dark web, and hackers will find you way more easily because they know that there's been security breaches in the past. So why wouldn't they target companies that have had security breaches? You need to do malware scanning on a regular basis to catch immediate problems. But some of these malware, and just think virus, like that's probably the easiest way for most listeners to think of it. Like sometimes malware can immediately create an effect on your website. Ransomware, all those kind of things. But sometimes they sit dormant for days, weeks, months, even years. And if you're not scanning your website constantly, these things can hide there and then just crush you in the future. So you need to be smart about that. And always, I don't think we're going to talk about this further on, but always, the best security you can possibly have. The front end security is really important. The back end security of backing up your website, vital. I can't tell you the number of times clients have even updated things on their website, or maybe even us, right? Like maybe we've been updating something on their website, and for whatever reason, WordPress has a glitch and the whole website gets shut down. And if we didn't have a backup that we could roll back to the previous day and get their site up running immediately, it would be tough. Right. So it pays to have smart people that do this all the time, helping you because, they just do it all the time and they're very good at, trying to make your life easy because that makes their life easy.
I have a question for you, Ian and Paul, probably, because you guys are more technical. Is there any risk if you have your website on a shared server and that another website on that shared server gets hacked and it compromises the integrity maybe of that IP address, or they get caught spamming, with emails? Does that have any impact anymore on your website, depending on, if you're on a shared hosting plan? Because a lot of people go as cheap as absolutely possible for their host. And it's like, I'll never understand that. I mean, it's like you're playing with fire. And if you ever do have a problem, good luck with the technical support. But I'm curious from a security perspective, Is that an issue?
It depends on how the server is set up. There's shared hosting and there's virtual shared hosting. And it depends on how the hosting provider isolates those things. So if the server is compromised, then yes, absolutely, it can affect anything on there. If someone hacks a particular website, but the hosting provider is using a virtual shared environment, which will isolate those websites, there's less of a likelihood of other websites being compromised. Now, if someone is buying email lists and just blasting out emails, and that shared IP address gets blacklisted, then yes, every website on that shared server is potentially blacklisted, because you can blacklist a domain name or you can blacklist an IP address. And if that shared IP address is blacklisted, that will affect every website on that server.
And I think the reason that that's important for our listeners is because when you go cheap, you're getting a whole lot less features to protect your online storefront, which is also your 24/7, 365 salesperson. Don't go cheap. Just don't.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Paul.
I was going to say, we have people that, we use a premium web hosting service, and, we have people, we've had people say, well, I can go get hosting for $5 a month. It's like, okay, so what, your business is worth $5 a month? That's what you're telling me?
Yeah. Would you pay for a building that's $5 a month, to house your building in, where people are going to come into it? You need to think about your digital properties like you think about your physical properties of your business. People don't equate the two, and there's a strong correlation. As a matter of fact, I think it's more important to protect your digital assets these days than because who knows what's going to happen with the ability for you to have people come into a place of business.
Yeah, and I would echo those thoughts too. If you're with a good, reputable hosting company, most of them will they have very robust monitoring systems. So even if you're on shared hosting plans, which aren't always cheap, right? The good hosts aren't always cheap, but they're much less expensive than having your own server, right? So that's often a choice people will make. But reputable hosts will have lots of monitoring stuff in place. So and very quick, what do you call it? Redundancies, so that if anything happens, like your site, you will not be impacted greatly with a very good host. Even if somebody is dumb on the same, there's somebody doing bad stuff, and quite frankly, most people that are doing bad stuff often use cheap hosting platforms because it's just a looser environment, right? So
Right. Yeah.
Usually you're in pretty good hands if that, plus you have some caring people watching over your online presence.
Yeah, and Ian, that you mentioned WordPress, plugins and other, whether it's Joomla, Magento, they don't call them plugins, but they have their versions. And if those aren't kept updated, a hacker can use that as a backdoor, so to speak, to hack into the website. So security, could probably do a whole podcast on hosting and website security, and everybody's eyes will glaze over. But it is important, and it does need to be addressed. So Ken, I've heard that website maintenance can actually increase your traffic. So how does that work? How can maintenance increase website traffic?
Well, Google operates on this concept of EAT: expertise, authority, and trust. So, content on your website, feeds a lot of that. But the structure of your website also feeds a lot of that. And if you're not maintaining your website, you've got broken links, and Google is, the Google bots crawl on your website and it sees you've got broken links, why is it going to continue to trust your website to present it high in search results? Because you're not paying attention and fixing these issues. So, by fixing broken links, by removing duplicate pages, adding new content, you're sending signals to the search engines who are constantly crawling your site. At least they should be. If not, that's another maintenance problem that you need to fix. But it's constantly coming and crawling your website. And anything that can erode confidence is ultimately going to erode search results. Likewise, if Google has confidence that it sees that you're doing ongoing maintenance on a regular basis, that you're adding new content on a regular basis, look, every website's going to have broken links. There's nothing we can do to prevent that. If somebody, links to a piece of content on our website, and we take that piece of content down, or change the URL and it breaks, or vice versa, people are linking to content back and forth on the website. So it's not a static environment. It's not like it's not like a brochure. It's not like an online PDF that you view that never changes and nobody ever does anything, to try to connect with it. So you have to pay attention. And, if you're doing a regular job of updating and maintaining content, it's like the first level of search engine optimization is really, the website monitoring, care, and feeding to take care of these, because they're low-hanging fruit type items. If you're sloppy and you use the same title tag on every page, first of all, that's bad from an SEO perspective, but Google sees that and it's like, okay, why would I give this website preference over another website if all of the things were equal? Because that content, nobody cares enough to go fix that content. And ultimately the user experience, if people have bad user experience, if they go to your website, and they're driven there because there's a broken link on your website, they hit it and they get the 404 and they bounce right away. Again, that just sends signals to the search engines that your website's not what somebody's looking for. And these are all things that are perfectly preventable if you're just paying attention and following a process of doing regular website maintenance.
Well, Jen, so Ken kind of touched on this, content's king. And I know we talked about this on a recent podcast, but I think people forget that content goes beyond just blog posts. That's the first thing that pops into people's minds. So could you talk a little bit about the different types of content that can be used on a website and why you would use different types of content?
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. Yeah, I think we all always default to think about a blog post or written content. Video is content. You could have audio snippets on there. You can have downloadable. I always like to go with downloadable checklists, but there can be downloadable documents, downloadable maps, downloadable infographics, visuals, as in diagrams. Can count as content for sure. So when we say content on your website, just think of it, you could replace the word content with information. So any kind of visual, text, audio information on your website. The point is that if you're thinking about your audience, we got to think about them in a few different ways. So first of all, and one of your audience members, we can't only be thinking about our target market. One of our audience members, as soon as you get into the digital world, one of your audience members, like it or not, is going to be Google. So what is Google looking for? Updated content regularly. Does that mean every single day? No, but at a regular cadence. So if you're going to start to take your website very seriously, like Ken said, as a 24/7, 365 salesperson, which essentially it is, what kind of cadence can you update your content in? It can be weekly, it can be every 2 weeks, every 3 weeks. It just has to be consistent. And then it has to be relevant and helpful content that is of value and original for your users. So, and the other thing I wanted to say about your target audience is you got to think there's many different types of buyers, right? You've got your buyers that's going to pull the trigger, holding the checkbook, if you will. We do a lot of B2B work, so that often involves there's several influencers involved, several people that you have to go through, say IT, finance, end users, in order to tick the boxes so that the grand decision maker can pull the trigger and say yes. But also too, no matter if you have one buyer that can make the decision very quickly off your website. Your audience is made up of people that have different learning styles as well. So not all of us like to dive in and read a whole bunch of content. So if you have diagrams, if you have any kind of infographics, visual, audio, video, just be sure that the different types of ways that people learn are covered on your website with the different types of content. As well, if you produce one piece of content, several different pieces of content can come out of that. So, for example, we do this podcast weekly. We have part of it, the first broadcast on video. Each of us are allowed to chop that up into smaller snippets in order to use as content. We have the audio, which is used as going to the podcast network. We can also chop up the audio into audio snippets. We get the transcription, so you can get several blog posts out of that, because we tend to talk a whole bunch. But each one of our questions ends up being enough information for a very targeted blog post. So for all of us spending 1 hour every week, there are multitude different types of content we can get out of that one piece of content. So I'd like you to think about that as well. It's not producing so much. It's how can one be either chopped up or used in a different context as well.
Okay, good information. Ian, I want to go back to security for a minute, because we talked about why it's important, and I know I'm giving you all the hard questions, but How would someone go about finding security issues? Is it a manual process? Are there tools that can be used? And is it something the average person could fix?
Yeah. So yes, there are tools. There's scanners. This is such an important factor for us that we've actually created an elevated hosting package that has its own security tech stack in it, and some of that is monitoring and scanning software. But just so you know, there's lots out there that you can use. One of the best in the industry is called Sucuri, and I'll just spell it out, because I think if any listeners want to check their own website, and maybe we could include the the link as well, but it's sitecheck.sucuri.net. So you just enter your URL there, and it will actually scan your website. Just know that I don't think you can get to know the no level of security risk, because they are a security company. They're trying to get you to invest in their software. If your site is really secured, it will say low security risk, but it will actually tell you a little bit about what's going on with your website and where there's some security issues. There's others out there. You can just do some of your hosting companies might have a malware checker. There's lots of tools that are out there, and even if you just search for WordPress malware scanning or anything like that, you can come across them. But talk to whoever's managing your website first, because something might be in place already, and they might already be monitoring your website, because monitoring is key. Regular monitoring of your website to ensure that there's nothing untoward going on. But yeah, there's lots of tools. You can check the website. Some are free. Some, offer a light version, and then a premium version. We personally, two tools that we really like on the security side are iThemes Security, which is pretty solid. And then even another level up is WordFence Premium. Just really, really good. You can, with WordFence, you can even block specific countries. So if it will warn you if your website is being attacked. It will tell you, when your login to your website has been locked out because somebody's tried too many times. You can set how many times they can try. We've often had to intervene for our clients, even without them knowing. In fact, even yesterday, one of our clients was under attack from Russia. And so, we were able to put a block on that country and just say, any IP addresses coming from this country, and there are ways around that, of course. But it is certainly like, if they're showing us their IP address, we might as well block it, right? So there's lots of things we can do. And we can also lock down the website if we feel they're under huge attack, which we've had to do for a few clients over the years, meaning that there's no way to log into the website for a period of time.
Yeah, and that's, you talked about WordFence and blocking things, and this goes back to your hosting provider to some degree. Like I said, we use a premium hosting plan. It's not cheap, but they already do a lot of these things at a server level, so you don't even have to worry about it. And
yeah, we've added this tech stack though, because what we found is some of the hosting providers' malware scans. We actually got caught once because our hosting provider we were investing in the malware scanning, and it kept coming back as negative. And then we actually discovered that, yes, indeed, through a different route, we found out that there was a malware on our client's website. And so we started to learn that there's different levels of quality of malware scanning. And so that's why we've created our own tech stack. We still use the hosting companies as kind of the level one. And then, if a client will invest in the bigger security tech stack, which we always recommend, it just adds more and more layers of security and protection for them. Because the last thing we want to do, even for ourselves as their service provider, we don't want to have to remediate a hacked website, right? It's huge pain. But for them, and as a fellow business owner, I never want my website to be down, and I never want that for one of my clients. So, yeah,
that's a good point. Hackers might be lowlifes, but they're not stupid.
They're not stupid. No, they're very smart people.
You did not hear that.
Hear what?
Exactly.
So, Ken, something else that's really important to Google is site speed. So can you talk about that, and what can cause slow load times? And again, is this something that the average person could fix? I mean, how difficult is it to fix the slow load times?
Yeah, so it's huge. As I think Ian mentioned, and we talked about before, Google does this thing called mobile indexing first, and it uses this concept called Core Web Vitals, where it looks at the performance of how fast your website loads, each and every page, but overall your website as well. And, it gives you recommendations on things that you need to improve. It tells you what are the slow loading or the resource heavy components. Now, some of that may be gobbledygook, to somebody who's not super technical. One of the best sites and most reliable sites is GTmetrix. You could go into gtmetrix.com, plug in your website, you get a free scan, and it tells you how fast your website's loading. It will give you some ideas of the resource utilization elements that you might need to go in and address and fix. On a simple basis, largely in my mind, there are three reasons why websites load fast. I'm going to talk specifically about WordPress because we just basically do almost exclusively WordPress. But the two of these are going to apply to any web platform. One is, how much script code are you trying to load whenever you're trying to load any given page, and particularly the home page of your website? A lot of people get really sloppy. They add a lot of stuff. There's a lot of bloat that's added over time. If you've had your website for years, you may have forgotten that there's this piece of script code that's still out there. Even if you're not actively using that script code may be trying to load upon first load of your website. So you need to go in and monitor for that and clear that out. That's probably not something that a layperson could easily do, but that is one of the big reasons. Here's one thing that everybody could do, and that is size your pictures properly. You do not need to have 300 dpi, the X large version of a file on your website. Website presentation does not equate to printing quality that's needed in terms of imagery. So you want to make your picture as light as possible. 72 dpi, I think Macs have a different
96.
96. You want to try and get it there. You don't need the super large pixel version, so you want to try to go through a process and get these pictures to be as lightweight as possible. There are tools that are out there that can help you do some of that. Even putting it into, Photoshop is obviously one, but you have to pay for that. But there are other tools that are out there. Ian, you and Paul probably have other ideas. I'm drawing a blank. I know there are a couple of
Canva's the big one nowadays.
Canva, but there's a utility too that will allow you to go in and upload a picture and it will size it for you in a really light manner. I'm drawing a blank on what that's called. Well, I'll try to find that. That's probably the biggest mistake we make is a lot of people, and if you're in a rush to get a page built, it's really easy to just, throw that picture out there and say, I'll come back to it and I'll improve it later, but I got to get this page live. It's hard to remember to go back and do that always. So that's one of the reasons why you want to pay attention to it. And then the other thing is just with WordPress, having a lot of plugins, and even if they're not actively being used, if they're still sitting on your website, it's just unnecessary bloat. It's just a potential security risk. So, periodically go in and review the plugins that you actually really need to run and provide the functionality you want on your website, and remove the ones that aren't needed. And if you don't address that bloat, it can really have an impact over time. And like I said, it also contributes to security vulnerabilities as well, because you've just got unnecessary pieces of code sitting on your website.
One of the things that I always chuckle at, Ken, when we're doing like a speed analysis of clients' websites, is like the worst offenders from a time to show on your screen are Google's own products, Google Maps and YouTube. If you have any of that on your pages, you are probably suffering a speed slowdown. So there are strategies in ways in order to defer those, or just ways around that. But that always makes me chuckle. Just a real quick comment too. We use GTmetrix all the time because it's more like a real life test. But the Google page speed test is kind of an industry standard as well. And I just thought it was worth commenting on that, because a lot of people see the results from the Google page speed test and it'll show you a mobile score and then a desktop score. And just so you know, the Google is actually using, I think it's a 2012 smartphone as its like speed of downloading for their mobile test. They are talking about upgrading it to a more like a 2017 version or something, but it's a really dated thing. So it's very, very hard to get a really great mobile score on their speed test. So it's just something to be aware of. So that's, when we're doing speed tests, GTmetrix is a much more reasonable approach, where if you can get an A or B score, you're doing quite well.
Yeah, there are image compression plugins that you can put on your website. But again, if you're starting with a massive file, the compression is only going to take it down so much. So you need to try to right size your images in the first place. Tiny PNG is one of the ones that I was thinking of. It's just a utility you can go to. You can put your image there, and it'll reduce the file size, which will increase the load speed.
What about caching and CDNs, Ken?
Well, yeah, those are important for improvements, but I don't know that that's. I mean, you've got plugins, for caching, and the quality of your web host is probably going to provide you with the CDN. So those are two important elements, but those start to get a little bit more technical and are really more of the tech stack, I think, that you have. So some people, if you're a somebody who's pretty sophisticated, even in using your website, even if that's not your regular day job, you might be able to work with CDNs and caching plugins as well. The other thing too is if you've got a really strong premium web hosting plan, they're going to disallow certain plugins because they already have a tech stack that they have designed and trusted over the years and continue to monitor and evaluate that may conflict with some plugins that you're trying to upload. So just keep that in mind too. If you've got security plugins or caching plugins, those are really common things that are going to be disavowed from a premium hosting platform because they've already provided a lot of those things, and they're doing it specifically because they want to own and control the quality of their tech stack.
But just so you know, you can also talk to them about bypassing those controls, because we've had to do that occasionally for our security tech stack because it's better than theirs. And so we've had to get them to release some controls so that our security tech stack can talk to the mothership of the security tech stack, if that makes sense.
Right. Yeah. Yep.
So should we go down the caching and CDN rabbit hole?
Maybe that's a topic for another day. I don't know.
Yeah. Could be. But that's a really good point, though, that what Ken was talking about, the images, you have to, if you size the images properly to start with, and then you compress them, that's going to really help speed up your website. And, the caching, we won't go into that, but it all works together. And I think it's important to understand that a lot of small business owners, it's not their job to know this stuff or do this stuff. And this is probably why you don't want to try to do it yourself. But Jen, it sounds to me like a lot of this comes down to testing. And so what are some of the things that should be tested on a monthly basis, or maybe even more often than that?
Yeah, that's funny you say that because we run into this, and I'm guilty of it too, right? You get your website all done, everything's working fine. You just want to, can it just work, right? But there's things that stop working for whatever reason, and some of those reasons are, so for example, let me just talk about WordPress. There could be certain updates that render other things not to work properly. And so you got to go in and give it a little bit of a tweak and a fix, and you're back in business. Now, you're not going to know that unless someone is looking at your site and maintaining it, every week or every month. And that's the type of thing that we've had good luck with some good website maintenance contracts where, folks are going in there looking every week or every month, depending on how complicated the website is, just to make sure is everything working right? Are the plugins updated and that kind of thing? So this is something that you can get either yourself or someone on your team to test. Just schedule it. It's a very basic thing. So you could be testing the forms on your website, right? So how often do you make sure that someone can sign up for your newsletter, or someone can sign up, to get a call with you, or to submit an inquiry? And that's the thing. You don't want those forms to be not working, because you've got someone who's really interested in taking the next step with your business, to not allow that information to come through. It's just, that would be, as the previous question, a bad experience, but also too, potential lost sale and whatnot. So the other thing is, if you're hosting the web host that you are using, if they're not providing backups daily, you guys had talked about this, in previous questions in this episode, it's just not worth it. It's just not worth it. I mean, you only need one time for your website to go down. to really understand and to really learn this lesson the hard way. And Ian, when you said you were alluding to daily backups, I know with some of our clients, when we talk about, we've got to make sure that we have daily backups, they just think that's kind of overkill. They're like, well, we're not updating our website every day. I mean, like, it doesn't change that often. But it's the type of thing that go for the best support that you can, because if your website goes down or if you need to reinstall, you want to have the most up-to-date site you can. So with that, go ahead.
Just real quick, in regard to backups, most hosting plans probably offer a 30-day backup, meaning that they'll keep the latest backup as of 30 days ago. So if you never go log into your website, but maybe once every 6 weeks or 2 months, something could have happened on your website and you may not have a credible backup. So you need to think about this stuff. You can't just set it on autopilot, and you really need to think about how do you take care of this stuff, and do you need to get to the point where you also keep an offline backup, that's not on not a part of your hosting, because if that gets compromised for some reason, anyway, it's not as simple as it seems. I mean, you can't just fire up a website, walk away, and think you're all good. Sorry, I didn't mean to.
No, that's a good point. So there we go.
If I can add an anecdotal support for something you said there, Jen, about going in and having people constantly testing your forms and whatnot. I actually had a client come to us. They weren't a client at the time, but they wanted us to take a look at their website. And the reason they wanted me to take a look at their website was because they said, Ian, we rebuilt this website a year ago. I haven't gotten one lead from this website in all that time. And I looked at the guy and I said, that's really weird. Like, even a bad website should get one lead in a year, right? You'd hope, unless you're totally invisible and have indexing turned off or something.
Right. Which happened.
But
don't index my website.
But what we found was, first of all, they didn't have Google Analytics installed, so you actually couldn't see how many people had been to the website. So that's a problem for diagnosing the issue. But what the problem was is exactly what Jen said, is the form, whoever had developed the website, they set up a form, the form didn't go anywhere. The two in the email, like what email to send it to, was blank. So, there might have been a trail of really upset prospects who had been trying to get a hold of this client for a year. And it was, that fixing that particular thing was, 5 to 10 minute job. For the diagnosing was a little harder, but the fixing was so quick, right? When you know where to look.
Yeah.
But to me, that just supports what you're saying, Jen, is things can happen, things can break, even with regular updating of things. A plugin might be updated, it might cause a conflict of some kind, and if nobody's testing stuff, you wouldn't know until a client complains. Yeah. So that's really great idea.
See, Ian, now you're just nitpicking about having the forms go somewhere.
Yeah,
I know. I'm so particular that way.
So particular on actually getting the sale.
I'm just funny that way. I think if you build a website, you got your 24/7 salesperson out there working for you, and they're taking orders, but they're not giving them to the company. That's a problem.
That is a problem. Yes.
That is a problem.
Yes.
In my opinion, I'm not real good at sugarcoating things. If your web host doesn't provide automatic daily backups, you need a different host. That's just how I feel about it. And when it comes to WordPress specifically, your plugins should be updated at least weekly, and because different plugins issue updates. It's not like every plugin on your website is updated at the same time. You can have 5 different plugins that are updated 5 different days. So that has to be done weekly, in my opinion. But Ian, so we need to kind of wrap it up here. Can you talk a little bit about the pros and cons. You know, we talked about why you should do this, a little bit how to do it, but is this something a small business owner or business should do in house, or should they, outsource it? Is it feasible for them to do it in house? I mean, what are the pros and cons there?
Yeah. Here's the truth. Here's the truth, people. Anyone can do this stuff. Anyone. As long as you have a little bit of intelligence, you can navigate your way through the tools. You can do this. The question is, should you be doing this? And will you be doing it as well as someone who is experienced, right? This is not to diminish the expertise involved in haircutting. I can cut hair. I would do a horrible job on your hair, but it's not like from the outside, it doesn't look super complex because the tools are simple, right? It's not the ability to pick up scissors or a shaver or hair coloring or whatever. It's the experience that goes into the person doing that job with expertise and quality that makes the difference. And I think that's really important and really true here. That professionals who do this all the time, they will bring a world of expertise and quality to this that ensures your website is in the best hands possible. So I think that's really important. Few other good reasons. We all have good intentions, but good intentions don't get the job done, and they don't keep your website secure, right? Everybody says, I started blogging 6 years ago, and you look at their website, and the last blog they did was 6 years ago. They got one out. Great. That's a good start. But that's like that type of behavior, which is very, very common with online stuff because we're all running our own businesses. We're managing people. We have a lot on the go. This will fall through the cracks unless you have, someone looking out for it. So good intentions don't get the job done. And you don't want to lose business because of this. There's a lot of complexity here. You've probably gotten a sense of that. Like it can be very simple, but simple usually isn't super secure or super well maintained. So there's professionals understand the complexity, they navigate it well, and they care about your best interests. And again, someone who does this all the time will have learned from their experiences, whether good or bad experiences, on how to keep your website up to date, maintained, monitored, secure. So my personal recommendation is always leave this in the hands of the professional. And I would go so far as to say, like, not only should they be helping you with the maintenance, the security, all of that kind of stuff, let them choose the hosting company. I've just seen so many times where we inherit a client or win a client, and they've been on GoDaddy for 17 years. We just know because we deal with these companies all the time. And I should have used some sort of hidden meaning for the company I just said, because I can't say anything bad about them.
You just cost us a sponsor.
Let's just say there's lots of options out there, and there's different tiers of quality, and somebody who lives and breathes this stuff will make sure you're in the best hands possible. That's all I'm going to say.
Can I add one more point?
Of course, yeah.
So your domain registration and your hosting plan are typically, your domain is annually or whatever term you buy it under. And your hosting could be monthly or it could be annual plan. Pay attention to those emails that you get. And if you don't know if it's legit, because there are a bunch of spammers out there that say, hey, your domain is about to expire. You can spend $280 to get it renewed. And they send you mailers, they send you email. So some of it's not credible, but you should know who you're
trying to steal your domain, right?
Exactly.
Like there's actual hackers
Yeah. So you want to make sure you know who is your domain registrar. You want to make sure you know where your website is hosted. And pay attention when those renewal emails come up, because even if you have a credit card on file, your credit card may have expired. And so you need to pay attention, because those things are only purchased for a particular term. So you need to pay attention to when those terms are coming up for renewal.
And you guys probably find this, right? Like we when we build relationships, we call it partnering with our clients, right? Because we're there to be their marketing authority and guide. Usually once we've started working with a client for a little bit of time, they know, just because, we might be on a call or something and they'll be like, hey, I got this email, and they'll learn to use you as the filter, you meaning you're the marketing expert, as a
Right.
filter
Right.
to determine what's real and what's not. And almost all the time, once those discussions start, I'm just like, hey, just like, if that comes across your desk again, just throw it over to me and I'll give you feedback. But do not click the button.
Right.
Do not buy these things, because there are so many spammers, hackers, cheaters.
And they
Don't-
come in the mail too.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point, because ignoring the legitimate emails can make your domain or website go away.
Yep.
So, this is actually a complex topic, and there's probably a lot more we could talk about, but this is a good place to wrap it up, I think, unless someone has anything imperative they feel they need to add. This is probably a good place to wrap it up. Thanks for joining us, and we will see everyone next week.